My name's Don Poole, and I'm the Coordinator of Accessibility Services here at Jamestown Community College. And I want to take the opportunity to welcome you to JCC. And the whole point of this, I want to take just a brief amount of time to run through this PowerPoint presentation and talk to you about what it's like to be a college student with disabilities and what the accommodation process looks like. Because while it looks very similar to what it may have looked in high school, there's also some very big and important differences. So in high school, just to go back a little bit, high school students have special education services through the IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And there's no confidentiality. Teachers are given a copy of your IEP or 504 plan. In fact, it seems like the whole school has a copy and knows your business. When it's time to take a test or do additional studying, they come in the room, grab you by the ear, drag you down to the resource room where there are special education teachers and aides to help you take your test or do whatever it is you need to do there. In classroom modifications or class requirements can be modified to fit the needs of the students. It's all about success. And finally, all students have the right to an education. You don't have to qualify to get a high school education. Now that you're in college, things have changed quite a bit. You're no longer covered under the IDEA because you're not in kindergarten through 12th grade. But students with disabilities are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or commonly known as the ADA, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. This covers all citizens with disabilities, and the big difference here is students must meet the program requirements to be students and participate in classes at college. The emphasis is on access instead of success. And there's a picture in the bottom right corner of this slide here that kind of sums up the ADA and what it's all about. There's a ramp that somebody could use if they were in a wheelchair, but also somebody could walk up that ramp. So it provides access to everybody. If we just had stairs, people that use a wheelchair could not access this building. But since we have the ramp, anybody or pretty much anybody can gain access to this building and do the business that they need to. Whatever this building does, they can do their business in that building without assistance. So the emphasis now is on student responsibility, and that's instead of the responsibility of the school. So again, like I said, there's no IEP, no 504 plan. The college can't ask if you have a disability, so we can't use that to decide if we're going to admit you or anything like that. You have to come to us and say, I have a disability, I have a barrier to education, and I need accommodations. We will not know that you have a disability unless you come tell us. Your school, your high school can't transfer your records without your permission, and we can't do anything with them without your permission. So we don't have special education services. Again, that's the K through 12 covered under the IDEA is the special education services. So the student is responsible for his or her own success. You're the one that's in the driver's seat. We do have services that can mirror or look like special education services. We have tutoring, but it's open to all students. So any student can get tutoring when they need it. The big advantage to that is there isn't that stigma, there isn't that embarrassment of going down to the resource room to get help with your classes, because Students without disabilities who have an A average are also there getting tutoring so that they can maintain that A average. So it's open to everybody, and we can't drag you by the ear down to the resource room or down to the learning center to get tutoring, but when you come down on your own, you can certainly get as much tutoring as you need, and you've already paid for it in your student bill, so there's no additional cost. On top of that, we have accommodations. They may or not change depending on your needs, um, but your needs themselves may change in college. Uh, the coursework is different. There's more work done outside the classroom, so we may need to modify your accommodations even from what you had in high school just to overcome your barriers that are in college. Again, we can't help if we don't know. If you're struggling and you're out there and you don't say anything, we're going to have no idea you're struggling. However, if you come to us and say, I'm having a problem with this, we can almost always help you find, either through an accommodation or a service here at JCC, a way that will help you. The old saying, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So this is a good picture of graph of visual representation of the way I see our services and what we're trying to do to help students with disabilities under the Americans with Disability Act in Section 504. This is what our goal is. This is our strategy. So there's 3 pictures in this slide. The one to the far left is a very smooth, a little bit curvy, but very smooth road. This is the road or path to education that most students with disability, or I'm sorry, most students in general would take to get their education. And that doesn't mean it's easy, it's curvy and all that. But if you follow that road or that path, it's pretty clear how you're going to get to your destination. The second picture, the one in the middle, that road is completely blocked by this huge boulder, and you can't get through. And that's a lot of times what a disability looks like to somebody as they're trying to gain access to education or whatever it is, that there's this barrier or this boulder in the way of you getting to your destination, you following your path. So our goal through the Accessibility Services Office is, with accommodations, to remove that barrier, remove that boulder, remove your rock, whatever it is that's getting in your way of your education, and make the road look a little bit more like the one all the way on the right. Unfortunately, when there's disabilities involved, we can't always make the road perfectly smooth, but if you've ever driven in Western New York, if you slow down a little bit, swerve around the big potholes that are going to swallow up your car, and continue on your road, eventually you will reach your destination. And that's our goal, is to remove that barrier so that you can access the tools you need to continue on your path to education. Getting started, how do we work this? You can meet with the Accessibility Services Office. That would be meeting with me. We need you to provide documentation of your disability so that we kind of get a good idea of what your barrier is. What is your boulder? What is your obstacle that's getting in the way? That could be your IEP or 504 plan, along with your psychological evaluation from your high school psychologist. It might be medical or mental health documentation, a note from your doctor or counselor that tells what your barriers are medically, or what your barriers are because of a mental health diagnosis. And the documentation must show the diagnosis and the functional limitations of your disability. In other words, what is your boulder? What is your rock? What is your barrier to education? Now, if you don't have these documents, don't panic. You can come into the Accessibility Services office, sign a release, and we can request those documents. So of course, if you have them handy and you bring them to our first appointment where we get acquainted and figure out what accommodations will help remove your barriers, it makes things go a little bit quicker. But if you don't have them, no worries at all. We can ask for those documentation or that documentation and get it from your provider or your high school. So receiving accommodations, what we'll do during that initial appointment where we get to know each other is we'll discuss what accommodations are appropriate and what can we agree on that will go on your letter to help you overcome your barriers. You're going to deliver your letter to your faculty members privately during their office hours because it's nobody else's business but yours. And that's for the classes where you want the accommodations. Unlike high school, where they give you a copy or give everybody a copy of your IEP 504 plan, in college you have the right to keep that information confidential from those that you don't want to know. So if you're taking a class and you don't believe you need accommodations, you don't have to deliver your letter and your faculty members has no idea you have a disability. And again, I said this before, but let the Accessibility Services office know if you have any problems, anything at all. You'd be surprised what we can help with, but we can't help if we don't know you're struggling. So in college, what are common accommodations? They may look very similar to what was on your IEP or your 504 plan in high school, what you had in high school. And they vary depending on student need. So we're going to get together, we're going to discuss your barriers to education, and we don't categorize you because of your disability, but we look at your boulder, your rock, your barrier to education and find the best accommodations available to remove that barrier. Commonly, accommodations look very similar to what you had in high school. We do a lot of extended time for tests and quiet testing environment, just like you may have had previously. A lot of students had tests read. Again, we don't have those special education services, but we do have software that will read the test, and most of our audio tests are done by software. And note-taking assistance is very common for those students that find it difficult or impossible to take notes, and that's commonly accomplished through audio recording of classes. So to get started, all you need to do is contact the Accessibility Services office. You can give us a call at 716-338-1251. You can text us at 716-219-5162. Or you can email accessibilityservices@mail.sunyjcc.edu. We'll get together, we'll discuss what barriers you may have to your education because of a disability, and we'll put in place the proper accommodations to help you overcome those barriers. Again, welcome to JCC, and we'll see you very soon.